I'm Ben Scott, and I'm the County Sheriff of Catoosa County. Quick introduction. I'm a career law enforcement officer. I have 32 years of law enforcement experience. I have patrol, investigative, and management experience. Throughout my career, I've obtained local, national, and international experience. I also have a bachelor's degree in criminal justice from the University of Tennessee. In the last 3 years, I've served as a court-appointed investigator cases, Hamilton County, Tennessee, because I didn't want to do anything in Catoosa County because I don't want conflict of interest. And we're not licensed in Catoosa County, that's one reason why. For cases for defense attorneys. So I have seen cases from both sides, the prosecution and defense side. And that's valuable experience that I never thought I would get, but valuable experience that I believe that I now have. I'm going to put that to work for the residents of Catoosa County, and I ask for your vote.
Hello, I'm Gary Sisk. I'm your current serving sheriff of Catoosa County. I've been involved in emergency services here in Catoosa County for over 25 years. Most of that with the sheriff's office. Started as a detention officer and worked my way up through the sheriff's office, pretty much every position there. I have a vested interest in this community. I'm raising my family here. I have two daughters in the school system. I think I've always stood for a vast interest in changing people's minds and helping correct criminals. That's the platform I ran on, and that's what I really believe in. My entire law enforcement career, we've been fighting a battle, or as they call it, the war on drugs. And many law enforcement officers will tell you every time we arrest one drug dealer, another drug dealer is right there to fill their shoes. We've got to change the other side of the coin. We've got to change the demand, the need for the drugs. We've got to do more of these people. I like Keith, but unfortunately his statement about money coming out of state court, I don't think our judicial system and our law enforcement are doing our job to make money for the community. We're here to try to correct people with the problems they have and make them better productive citizens of our community. And that will reduce the amount of people that are in our jail. That will reduce the need for the services that we have to provide in the county. And with that, and I ask that your continued support as your sheriff, I would appreciate it and ask for your vote in 24. Thank you.
Thank you for your questions.
A friend of mine is the 3rd District Republican Chairman, Dale Jackson, and he came here and pretty much had a whole meeting devoted to the cause of autism. And his son suffers with autism and found that prescription medication really don't do anything for his son, and actually found that cannabis oil, marijuana oil, alleviated almost a lot of the symptoms. And I know you don't directly have a say in this, but as a member of the Sheriff's Association, as far as leading this fight, get some common sense reforms and some access to these oils to alleviate, the symptoms of all these thousands of children who have autism. I think 1 in 100 now get autism, whatever it is. But what would you do as an advocate for this type of common sense access to, cannabis oil? Thank you.
Sheriff's Association?
Just as if elected sheriff, on a state level, what kind of advocate would you be for that kind of common sense access to cannabis oil and medical purposes?
I'm an advocate for anything that is legally controlled and prescribed by a physician that can help somebody with a medical problem. I am not against marijuana. Once I didn't say I wasn't for it, I am not against it. The genie is out of the bottle of medical marijuana. There's over 25 states, I think, now that have medical marijuana laws in this country. It's a mixed mash of all those laws around. Everybody does their own thing. When you start talking about medical marijuana, there's more to consider than just, is that helping somebody? There's a lot of anecdotal evidence that if I give it to my son or my daughter, it will help them with autism. There's other people that say if I take it, it helps my parents with Alzheimer's. They're starting to say that medical marijuana helps every single thing that you give it to. The problem is that there's a mishmash of studies throughout the United States as well. Some in California, some in Michigan, and for every study that you can find that says it works, you'll find another study that says it may not. So when you start talking about cannabis oil, you start talking about issues that people that are giving their children these, and doctors will tell them it's not a science per se. A lot of it is trial and error. Give them this much, give them that much. But there's been no clinical trials, long-term clinical trials, that tells you what is the long-term effects of this to establish the dosage units, what drugs are good, what you can interact. I saw one testify in Georgia about this law. And she testified and was given cannabis oil, but there's also still on every other drug they go on. So the goal is to reduce. If it's good, let's find out exactly how it works, what it works, to determine the exact dosage units that you need to have to make sure that you can put it forward and have medical science back it up, as opposed to this university says this and this university says that, and have a study big enough with clinical trials so that you will know exactly whether or not this works or doesn't. Other countries around the world are way ahead of us on this, and one of the problems with doing this is that it's classified as a Schedule I drug. The other problem you have in doing some of this is because the same organizations that won't medical marijuana. Thank you.
I'm not against medical treatment for our young people. What I am against was House Bill 722 and the way it was written. And what I have been against is House Bill 1 when it was first brought out about low cannabis oil and low THC. And part of the issue is they wrote that bill, our representatives did, knowing good and well they had no way to get it here. I mean, our legislators at the state are doing things that they don't quite understand what we're going to be dealing with on the street. A part of House Bill 722 said that it was going to bring in 2 manufacturers, at a minimum 2 manufacturers, and they'd all have to have 4 distribution points throughout the state, and there was less than 1,000 people that was on the registry to even receive it. So they were going to have multi-million-dollar investments into these manufacturing and distribution points, but yet a very few small people that were even registered to get it. There have been studies, as Mr. Scott said, that show that the low THC, low cannabis oil actually causes brain damage to children. So something I would say is, one, where is the medical community in standing up and saying this is such a great thing? But right now, all of your hydrocodones and things like that, they come from illegal drugs. You know, but yet they went through the same manufacturing process and the same FDA approval as they needed to become a legal drug. So, and if that's the case, then go through the same process. We need to approach our federal government and get it changed down to Schedule I, to where they can do something like that. But they need to look through it throughout the whole thing and see how it's going to be dealt with. I mean, we've got a huge prescription pill problem that is regulated too, but yet it's part of the problem. I mean, we need to get control of what we've already got going on. And I understand there's young people out here suffering from it, and but we need to be doing more as a country. Our medical professionals need to be doing more to stand up. There has been one pharmacy that I think already has done the studies with some of the benefits.
Now that we're talking about the state legislation, this past legislative session, we had 2 issues come up, which were no-knock warrants and civil forfeiture. What are your opinions on those 2 issues?
Okay. First, on no-knock warrants, there is a time and a place for a no-knock warrant for the safety of the officers and individuals that are going in the home. But I think it does need to be presented before a judge. Every warrant doesn't need to have a no-knock clause in it. That is a specific clause that is asked for in the no-knock. And every warrant doesn't have to have that. It's testified, there's probable cause for it, it's given to a judge that determines whether or not that needs to be what takes place. And the second part was on civil asset forfeiture, is that correct? You know, it's a tough situation, but I do agree that all civil asset forfeitures ought to at least continue through the criminal process. I know there are some agencies that have done civil asset forfeitures and that probably had no intentions of moving through with the criminal process. There have been a number of agencies that have taken advantage of this, used this above the means of what they should have, And I would totally be against that. I'm for better policing of it. I'm for better policing of our law enforcement. And I think that's something that I have done as sheriff, is we need to be watching over what we're doing and making sure we're doing what's proper according to the law and what's best for the people of our communities that we serve.
No-knock warrants should always be the exception and never the rule, period. There are going to be times when maybe the life of someone inside a house, it's not always about drugs or evidence. It could be the life of the person you're trying to save. If you know somebody's there and know that you're going into a house, there's destructive evidence issues, but it should always be the exception and never the rule. It should be very rarely ever used, and when you do use it, you should be able to make sure that you can convince a judge that you actually need it with good probable cause with a lot of explanation. Just putting something in a warrant, and I've seen this in my career, we put something in a warrant, we believe they're going to destroy evidence, and you have a judge will issue a warrant based on that. A lot of this falls on the judiciary as well. The judiciary has to make sure they hold the officers accountable to make sure that when they ask for something as significant as a no-knock warrant, because the Fourth Amendment says you have a right to have your personal papers and privacy, you shouldn't do anything without a search warrant. When you do a no-knock warrant, you're going against some of that because you've got to get in there, you've got to have whatever the problem is. So the judiciary has to hold the officers responsible as well and make sure that the probable cause presented is enough to justify that no-knock warrant. As far as civil forfeiture goes, civil forfeiture is one of the best things. Forfeiture of drug assets is one of the best things and worst things that ever happened to law enforcement. A lot of departments depend on that money to keep their operations going. They depend on that money to buy things, buy toys, buy equipment, buy whatever they need that they can't get money from the budget. We even have some departments, some units that actually depend on civil forfeiture, asset forfeiture to keep their units up and going. And when you depend on your budget by the money you're taking away from somebody on the interstate, you're asking for problems. So you need to make sure if you have a program like that you go through the civil aspects of it, and you would hope to be able to go through criminal forfeiture instead of civil forfeiture to make sure that you have a criminal charge to go along with it. It's not always possible. A lot of times we'll make a seizure, it'll be a seizure on the interstate, an airport, and people just walk off and leave their money. Thank you.
My question to you both are, people that move into our county, or how do you feel about, the tags and things like that, the registration? I know, I've lived here all my life, and I still see people, I know some people personally that, as my customers that have moved here, and they've been here probably a year, and they still run Tennessee tags. I feel like it, I'm sure you're doing a fine job on it, but I'm just asking you, are there any kind of, from the tax office or what have you, you get notifications of anything like that, letting you know that the residents have moved in their area, and then your officers patrol the area? And also, if you're elected, how would you handle that situation?
When you move into Catoosa County or any other state, and I've moved into multiple states over the last 30 years, and I had to change my registration. Believe it or not, I had to pay taxes on my cars, even though I already paid taxes on them in another state because they won't charge you taxes. There's a time frame to change your tags over. You should adhere to it. You should change your tags over and pay the money that it costs you to get registered in Georgia. If you're driving around and you lived here for a year with Catoosa County, and you're driving around with Hamilton County tags, Alabama tags, I don't care where it is, then you're subject to be stopped and issued a citation for it. You should be subject to the law, same as people live here the whole life. It's subject to you too. Don't move into Catoosa County and drive your Hamilton County car around, your personal car around, without paying the fees that everybody else has to pay. Period.
Yeah, that came up several years ago under the former sheriff, Sheriff Wilson. I'm sorry, Sheriff Summers. And what we did is that we did approach the county. The county passed an ordinance on it, and made it a non-moving violation. So we actually can cite someone to magistrate court to go before the court. Some of the issues that we have is because we live on a state line, really a triple state, but it mainly really involves Tennessee, is people can actually own businesses in Tennessee, and then the car comes back registered to the business. We've ran across people that actually have another home in Tennessee, and then it falls back to where they claim homestead. What is your primary home? Do you live there 51% of the time or what? So it does get difficult determining if, but if we can determine and we can figure that out, then absolutely someone should be cited. Anyone that thinks someone is driving without a properly registered vehicle, you can call the sheriff's office. We'll go out and check it. But 9 times out of 10, it got to where there for a good while. When we did go out and check it, it was that it was wound up registered to a business, or it was that they had another home in another state, and trying to determine that 51%, when it comes to court, if you can't prove that, it's up to us to prove that case, it's going to get kicked out.
Thank you.
The county sheriff's the most powerful position, law enforcement position in America. What would y'all do if the federal government, an agency of the federal government, or the United Nations decided to go door to door and confiscate our firearms? What would you do?
Be over my cold dead hand. Don't think I can say much more than that.
We would like to think that if something like that ever happened, this country would be in a heck of a mess to begin with. As the constitutional officer and officer sheriff, you have to do to uphold the Constitution. We will not confiscate guns. I will not assist anyone in confiscating guns. I will not be over my cold dead hands because I don't want to get killed over it, but I will lose my life over it if I have to. But I hope that I've got a lot of people, a lot of citizens standing with me to prevent that from ever happening. To make sure that we have something in place. That never happens in this country. I hate to see this country come to the point where that actually happens. And there's a lot of fear of that right now in this country, that that's going to happen. And when people start talking about the gun regulations, what the government's going to register all your guns, you're going to take away your guns, there's a role that people have to play. And the sheriff has to make sure that he protects and defends the Constitution at all costs of the Constitution.
Anyone else have a question? I'll ask a question.
Have either of you ever considered yourself a Democrat or voted as a Democrat?
Your answer is no, however, about 2/3 of my family have. I guess what my in-laws are, Democrats, and vote Democratic. I think everybody should have a say-so about what they believe in. Myself, I believe I'm a Republican, I've always voted as a Republican, and will continue to vote as a Republican, and I'm running in this race as a Republican.
No, I don't consider myself a Democrat. I've never ran as a Democrat, but yes, I have voted for a Democrat. My former boss was a Democrat. So I have voted for that, but I fully believe in smaller government and doing it for the most cost-effective way that we can do it. And I think that's the core value.
Why do you want to be the sheriff of Catoosa County?
I retired from my former law enforcement job. I was ready to, I had to retire, but I wasn't ready to quit work. I felt like the two things come before me. I had something else I needed to accomplish. I felt like I needed to accomplish with my life. And this is where I feel like I need to be. I feel like the office of sheriff is so important, and I've learned so much about it working throughout the country, that I think that the sheriff's office needs to have the most transparent and accountable office in this county. It's the second largest budget in this county. And we should at this point be issuing an annual report telling the citizens what we're doing with that close to $8 million that we're getting. So I want to be sheriff of Catoosa County. I want to bring professionalism, a level of integrity to Catoosa County. I want to bring communication, and openness to the sheriff's office that they've never had before. People have town hall meetings. It's simple to do. to make sure there's open lines of communications. I want to bring professional law enforcement service. I want to bring what I have to offer to the citizens of Catoosa County. My experience and education to Catoosa County to serve the residents of Catoosa County. I haven't been a lifelong resident of Catoosa County, but my wife and I chose to make Catoosa County our home when we transferred back here. And I care about this county. I want to lead this county as your sheriff and do everything we can to make this the best county, protect our children, protect our seniors, and protect every resident of Catoosa County, and bring my experience and education to bear to make that happen.
Is there, wait, you sure? Would you like to answer that question, please?
If I'm allowed, yeah, sure. Why did I want to become sheriff of Catoosa County? You know, I dedicated pretty much my entire law enforcement career to Catoosa County. Not pretty much, I did. And I really felt that when Sheriff Summers was looking to retire and announced his retirement, I was his second in command at that time. And I felt like the doors were opening for me for a reason. So I offered myself up to the citizens of Catoosa County. I'm very passionate about it. I'm very involved in our community and our school system, with our young people. We are being the most open that we have. I haven't done an annual report as far as what we're doing. Instead, I post it all the time on social media as to what we're doing. I've offered citizen academies to bring people in and actually put my different divisions and everyone up before you and give you tours of the sheriff's office. I go and hold a cable TV show once a week, take open phone calls that are not screened or anything. Anybody can call in and we talk to you. You know, so I'm there. I'm open for you. I've had many people come in that don't have appointments. It doesn't matter if I'm there, I'll see you. You call me, I'll return your call. So I've been accessible to the people, and I'm here to serve the people of Catoosa County because I want to make it the best it can be. And that's why I want to be your sheriff of Catoosa County. Thank you.
Now, both of you guys have large experience in law enforcement, but how many actual years of actual, like, in the car, you know, not behind the desk experience do you have in all of those years of experience?
Of that, actually patrolling in a vehicle in a uniform, I have somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 years.
Patrolling in the vehicle, I was Chattanooga police officers for almost 7 years before I took an appointment with the Department of Justice. So I have 7 years patrol experience at Chattanooga Police Department. From there, I became an investigator, special agent in the Department of Justice from '85 until '96. And I was transferred to Washington in a supervisory position. Served in a supervisory position from '96 to almost 2000. Then I got transferred back to Chattanooga as the resident agent in charge of this office. And here, as a supervisor, we also conducted and worked as part of an investigative team. I was a supervisor for all the agents here, but we also worked on the street as well. So I also continued to work as an extra member of a team. So I not only had to run the office, but I was out and made buys. I even did some undercover work when I first got back here. So the extra experience, I didn't move to a managerial position, just stay there. I made sure that I was out, working. We needed an extra person, I was there. So as far as experience, that's my patrol, investigative, and management experience over the last 32 years.
Thank y'all both for running. I see in our community at large one of the biggest issues the gang problem. I imagine, don't really know, that there will be a spillover, if not now, eventually. So, do y'all have anything y'all want to say about that? Thank you.
The gang issue is a very serious issue, and yes, there are spillovers that's coming into Catoosa County. Our sheriff has highlighted some of those in the past. It's not going to get any better, it's going to get worse. The efforts must continue that are already going on to make sure that we confront that problem. But there's a major problems right across our state line. The problem is these guys know no boundaries. They do not care if there's a state line. They'll come over here and do something, they'll go back. The more urban our community becomes, and this is a great community because you have a mix of urban and rural areas. The more urban our community becomes, the more people you put in one place, the more it's going to cause us a problem because you can hide in plain sight. People will leave one jurisdiction and go to another because you don't know who they are. So we have to maintain our efforts, constant efforts, to make sure we determine who these are when we see them. The Norfolk Chattanooga Police Department, Hamilton County Sheriff's Department, our surrounding counties in Georgia, and all the other surrounding counties in Tennessee to determine if we're dealing with the same people they're dealing with for communications. Deconfliction, when we have a problem with one, make sure we know who they are. If they're wanted in Tennessee, we get them down here. We need the whole department to come get them. Our laws are a little more strict than what they are in Tennessee on some things, so we're a little hesitant. But we've already seen over the last few years, we've seen some home invasions, we've seen robberies at ATMs, we've seen a house kicked in, one got shot, if I'm not mistaken. So we have that problem, and the efforts on that have to be continuing. We can't let up, we have to be relentless on making sure we know who they are, where they are, and what they're doing in their methods of operation. Anything that you do, gang enforcement is almost a science in and of itself. You don't know whether they're doing it for turf, you don't know whether they're fighting because they want money, or whether they're selling drugs to get power. So it's a continuing effort that you can't let up on. You have to pay close attention to every single person that's coming in your county that's validated to make sure that we know, in conjunction with Walter,
Since taking office in 2013, I assigned 2 investigators specifically to gang investigations. They first embedded themselves with the Chattanooga gang unit to learn more about what it was they were doing up there, and we brought that back down here. We're the only Georgia agency in Northwest Georgia maintaining a gang database that verifies actual gang members. And yes, sir, we do have approximately about 70 gang members in Catoosa County. We also worked with our local police departments and presented them with trainings about how we verify gang members, and I've given them access to our gang database so that when they're out with someone, they can access it through our website and see if we already have information on that person and what we need to do as far as re-verifying them every time. Also with that, we went to our school system because unfortunately they are in our school system as well. And we provided numerous trainings for our school administrators, and those 2 investigators actually go and spend time in our schools, especially during lunchtime. And we've actually seen students sitting there throwing gang signs, wearing gang colors. And we're educating our school system about that so that they can start addressing it themselves. And when they see people that are of interest, they let us know so that we can track them down. We worked with Chattanooga and Hamilton County on a daily basis. Actually, just not too long ago, the U.S. Marshals out of the Smoky Mountain District came down and asked for us to have 2 officers, especially federal deputizations, with them so that we can cross that state line a lot easier with them. Because we're going up into Chattanooga and talking to these individuals on a regular basis. They're mainly committing a lot of their crimes in Chattanooga and Hamilton County, and they're coming down here and trying to lay low a little bit. We do have a couple apartment complexes that my investigators are going to and spend several evenings at. Inside some of our city limits, we're working with them to help them identify these people. We're not seeing the tagging and things like that you would in a metropolitan area, but yes, they're there. But yes, we're on it. And we're going to be in their face. And my message to them has always been, get out of it, or you're going to see us every day.
This will be our last question.
Just like to ask a follow-up question about federal overreach. We had Waco, federal FBI, murdered family members, and we had Ruby Ridge, or they murdered a bunch of children, but Ruby Ridge, they murdered family members out in Wyoming, the federal outlaw, weapon firearms, killed what appeared to be our standing citizen. When these agencies come into our county, Catoosa County, don't they need to go through you? And don't you need to be in charge of the limits of their operation, what they're doing?
Okay. Right now, we have a great relationship with all of our federal agencies that serve our area, and we work with them hand in hand. They do come to us and let us know about investigations that are going on in our areas. A lot of times, it may be us seeking to help out with them and some of their databases that they have access to. But yes, I do have some say as far as talking to them and hearing about what's going on with a particular case. I know most of that out west has been over federal land and the rights of federal land and such, and we don't necessarily have that big of a problem with that here in the eastern part of the United States. But I think we have a good relationship with our federal agents that we work with, and that they're not looking to overstep their bounds in our area.
I ran a federal agency for 10 years in Chattanooga. I was also a local law enforcement officer, so I know that I've worked for both, and I know the challenges that each face. We worked in cases with the Catoosa County Sheriff's Office before Sheriff was becoming the sheriff while I was still in Chattanooga. It's my policy that we contact and work with those local agencies. Federal agencies, and people don't know, is you're granted authority to work certain crimes by the United States Code. Drug agents use Title 21, gun agents, ATF uses Title 18. Everybody has a role to play. What happens when you start having federal overreach is when it's meant to be a stopgap. We're not meant to come into an area and enforce local laws. We're not. We look for things where we have to cross state lines, because a local agency can't do that. You might get a federal deputation or head of the marshal service if you're not a fugitive, but you're not supposed to be able to. You need some help to make sure you can cross those state lines. If you're running a trafficking organization that starts in Chicago and goes all the way to Atlanta, and it stops in every state in between, it's a disjoint. If you have a federal agency that actually plays by the rules, works with the local authorities, cooperates, then you don't have problems. When you've got an agency that wants to do things outside of the jurisdiction, it's when you start having those problems. I never did it when I ran DEA, and I won't do it as a sheriff in Catoosa County.
Thank you, guys. A couple of dates that I wanted to remind you of before we adjourn for the evening. I talked about early voting starting on Monday, May 2nd. Actually, you need to be